Hello and welcome, my name is Alex or Mont, and in this video we're going to be talking about the second enemy faction that is encountered by new guardians in Destiny, the Hive. And of all the numerous foes we face, I think the Hive might just be the worst of them. Why? Not because of their weapons or their numbers, but because of their methods. Apparently unique amongst those we fight, the Hive have a wish to understand us, and the enemy understood is the enemy least underestimated, the enemy most prepared for. To put it another way, if we were an insect in their way, the Fallen would step around us, the Vex would throw us outside, and the Cabal would crush us under heel. Whereas the Hive would pull our legs off one by one, and wait and watch as we die. And then they would dissect us to understand just how we work. They take prisoners and they torture for information. If there are enemies who best represent the darkness, and if there's one best suited for fear, it would surely be the Hive. But who are they? What are they? Where do they come from and what do they want? If the Cabal represent what humanity was, the Fallen represent what we might become, and the Vex are our complete opposite in all things, our foils, what are the Hive? Like the Vex, they are a looming threat that cannot be reasoned with. But even then, they do seem to have hints of society and culture. The Hive are almost akin to dark crusaders, waging war in the name of their pantheon gods. Almost, just almost, a bit like a mix between the Flood and the Covenant from Halo, almost as if those two combined. The Hive is belief and horror, and Acolytes its instruments. I believe Acolytes are the basic form of Hive, we'll get to Thralls in a moment, but they are the lowest citizens who can hope to rise, much like dregs hoping to rise through the ranks of the Fallen. Acolytes pursue this ascension, but for all two different reasons. For the Fallen dregs it is more personal, whereas Acolytes are hungry to please their dark gods. Presumably, if they survive long enough, Acolytes become knights, their bodies encased in the iron-tough, armoured exoskeletons that Acolytes have the merest hints of, whereas Thralls themselves are naked. And in regards to those feral creatures, well, it's in their very name, no? Thrall, which, put simply, means slave. Born of the Hive's will, I wouldn't be surprised if Thralls were in fact guardians that had been killed and stripped of their light and reforged as a mindless slave of darkness. After all, what better tactic than to raise your enemies dead against them? Or perhaps they are simply born from the worms that Hive seems so fond of. Perhaps the same is true of the ogres. Like Thralls, they are less members of the Hive and more weapons. There are hints that they undergo painful transformations and rituals to imbue them with greater strength. And in a way they do resemble mutated Thralls. They appear to lack the distinctive head ridges that Acolytes, Knights and Wizards all share. Oh, and how about those Wizards? If there is any enemy a bane to my guardian, surely it is them. Despite their names, Wizards are in fact female, so perhaps witch would be a better term, or better yet, priest, or maybe even shaman. At any rate, these dark sorcerers are what any right-minded guardian should fear and prioritise most when it comes to kill order. These are the ones that deal in torture and experiments. Of their numbers, we know of Mormu, Iryut, and the Heart of Crota. Oh, and of course, Omnigul. Mormu is rumoured to be responsible for rituals carried out upon the ogres. Maybe she is the one we have to thank for Fogoth. The Heart of Crota is known to have personally peeled the light from Guardians. An act not only cruel, but practical. It appears either the light or the pain itself, or indeed both, was nurturing Crota's children, feeding and empowering them. And then there's Omnigul herself. I can only assume the Will of Crota, as she is known, is the highest ranked member of the Hive we have yet to encounter, not including Crota himself, that is. She is his will. She commands and controls his forces. And Crota? Well, during the battle for the moon, a huge number of Guardians sought to retake the moon, and were thwarted by Crota. Personally, he ended many famous Guardians with his blade, one by one. We don't know how large this army was, but we know it numbered at the very least 50, and was at the time, and to date, the greatest army of Guardians ever assembled. And in the wake of that battle, humanity abandoned the moon rather than face Crota again. And part of Crota's strength comes from his trans-dimensional existence, which in itself gives us a clue to the Hive's nature. The Hive appear to come from a different dimension of space, and each of their gods calls home his own world or universe, created by their dark power. When facing Crota, it seems we enter this strange, dark reality, and that is why we are able to strike him down. We are taking the fight to him on his home turf, where he is strongest, sure, but he's also weakest there. The one advantage to this truth is that it somewhat limits Crota's movements in our reality. That is why he was, for the most part, bound to the moon, but even then he managed to defeat the greatest Guardian army ever assembled. A force greater than even the one at the Battle of the City. And that was a battle that we won. And on the moon, well, we did not win there. But this truth to Crota's strange existence, it also means there are likely things out there much larger than Crota, for despite his immense power, it is speculated that he is, in fact, the least of the Hive's gods. He's the son of Oryx. But does that mean Oryx is the greatest of them all? Or is he just one who happens to have taken an interest in our world because of the Traveller's Light? Maybe he is just one finger, the hand of darkness, so to speak. There are 4 words, if they can be called such, that Toland the Shattered has observed. Air, Zol, and Yul. But even Toland knows not what they mean. He speculates they may be the names of planets in the Hive tongue. But let's go back a moment to one of the wizards we talked about earlier. Mormu. Her full title is Mormu Zolspawn. She is said to be born from the blood and flesh of Zol, which makes it seem unlikely that Zol is a planet unless the Hive netherworlds, such as Crota's, are some type of biological living planet. But either way, this makes it seem to me that Air, Sol and Yul are the 4 great Hive gods. And what's more interesting beyond that is that Toland remarks that there is a 5th, though he has yet to make sense of it. Could the 5th be Oryx, or something else entirely? Because that would be 4 and then 5. You know, like 4 fingers and a thumb. Could make sense, I suppose. So, the Hive come from a dark reality where each god marshals his strength from a planet, the seat of their great power, and they can tear their way into our reality with seeming ease. Just look at how their tomb ships rend space. Does that remind you of anything? The Fallen and Cabal come via dropships, and the Hive tear through space, and the Vex? Ikora Ray, the Warlock Vanguard, has noticed the correlation there. She ponders on the interrelationship of the Vex gates and the Hive netherworlds. The way I see it, the Vex can tear through time, the Hive can tear through space. Remember that early mission on the moon? Remember what our ghost said? They've broken the Bekenstein limit. That is to say that, in essence, they have broken the laws of physics. The Bekenstein limit is to say that only a certain amount of information can be stored in a certain physical space. For example, a USB memory stick in this day and age can hold vastly more data than one from even a few years ago. But there is an upper limit that can, theoretically at least, be reached. It probably won't be reached in, anytime soon, but it can be reached. Even if you break it down to the scale of individual atoms, eventually you will run out of physical space. Unless you are the Hive, who seem to literally break space and just about every rule of the universe we can thusly understand. And that's just another reason I think you'd be right thinking to fear the Hive. And what do the Hive want? Not even Eris knows. Eris, who ventured back to the moon after the ill-fated battle in an attempt to assassinate Crota, and subsequently spent ages in the dark of the Hive tunnels, learning of them. And not even Toland knows, the one who arguably knows more than any other living person about them. Do they want Rasputin? Or is he merely a way for them to achieve something else, such as the Traveller itself?
In its dying breath, the Traveler released the ghosts to open doors.